guys, so today we're going to talk to you a little bit about how Jeremy and I each got back into our faith in our 20s.
Alright, so this is what I'm going to arguably say is probably one of the most personal and important things that we're going to make a video about.
100%. Life-changing.
Life-changing. 100% life-changing. So I guess we should start at the beginning and talk.
Good place to start.
It's always a good place to start, right? And talk a little bit about, I guess, our faith journeys.
Yeah.
Right? Should we give like a quick rundown? Okay, so I will go as fast as possible. I was basically born in the church. My father was a preacher for, how old am I now? About to be 30. Almost 25, 26 years of my life. So every Wednesday night for Bible study, and then twice on Sundays, we were in the church building. We lived in the parsonage of the church. That was how I grew up. That was my community. I stayed the night at a lady from my church's house before I stayed the night at my own grandmother's house. That was my family. That was my community. Those were the people I grew up with. That's where all my friends came from. And that's where I spent probably the majority of my time and a lot of my childhood. Vacation Bible school was huge, all that stuff. I was baptized when I was 8 years old. And then I got to high school. And I think this is probably a pretty standard story for most people who are PKs, preacher kids. But like, you just start getting in with people who, like, that's not what's important to them. And unfortunately, you get drawn into that because everybody, I think, once they get to middle school and high school, starts to want to just fit in. And they start to kind of lose ground of who they are a little bit at the core. And they start doing things that, you know, might not necessarily be the best things or the most faithful things because they're just trying to fit in. And that was my story. Not saying anything bad against my friends, that they're not great people or that some of them aren't faithful people. It's just that when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid, that's not what you're thinking about. And I think that is something important that we could all try and change for people. But I will honestly say that I really fell away from my faith. I stopped going to church. I stopped looking for God. I stopped daily chats with Him. Kind of all of it. And it wasn't until very, very recently that I really got back into it. And actually surpassed where I probably was as a kid into my adult life. So to keep this brief, I got into a very, very dark place where I just felt like I was the furthest away from God that I've ever been about a year ago. And I didn't want anything to do with anybody. I didn't want anything to do with anything. I had a great life on the outside, but internally I just felt very, very lost and depressed, and I didn't know why. And I'm going to press pause on my story there because I think then after you talk about your story, they'll kind of come together and we can kind of talk as one.
So my faith journey, growing up, most of my faith foundation came from my grandmother and my aunt. They would take us to church each week, me and my siblings. My grandmother taught me Sunday school. She was always a representation of what a good, faithful mother and grandmother and friend and teacher should be. I'm so grateful that I had her as an example of what a woman of faith looks like, and she was an excellent example, anybody can tell you. So my childhood, again, same story as Jeremy. I got baptized after seeing Billy Graham preach in Cincinnati at I guess it would have been the old football stadium then, or maybe it was just when it became Paul Brown, I'm not sure. I got baptized after seeing Billy Graham speak, which I tried to find that video on YouTube and I couldn't find it, so that would be really cool to see what, you know, led me to that place. But growing up, I'm sure everybody has experiences like this, but maybe not. I was a child who was very in my own head. I had a lot of like anxiety issues and where do I fit into this world issues and sadness. And there was a lot of times as a kid that I would talk to God and like beg God for things and plead to him. I mean, without knowing it, I was so faithful as a child. Like I would go through some of the most challenging days or saddest days, and in my own mind as a little tiny child would just say like over and over again to God, like, please God help me, please God help, like. And looking back on that now that I know the knowledge that I have from digging into my faith really hard this last year, it's really cool that it's kind of like in a weird way I'm getting back to that kid.
For sure.
Because I was not a kid who had a bunch of things superimposed on me in terms of how to be faithful and how to act like a Christian. My faith was actually like a deep faith. It was internal. I didn't know the facts on how to do it right. I didn't know anything, but I knew that I had it. And I knew that I believed that, and I witnessed God like pull me out of some things in my family. And so I had this great faith as a kid. And then my story is a little bit different in terms of, yes, other things started taking my attention in terms of like music and school activities, and just like the world took my attention. But more so than that, my own self-sufficiency started taking my attention. I learned very quickly how reliant I could be on myself in terms of meeting the needs that I needed to in this world to seem successful and to seem well taken care of. And I started layering on facades. I started really taking care of myself. I mean, like from the age of 15, I really kind of started supporting myself mostly financially. All of my schooling, I was very good at school, so I could I felt like if I just worked really hard, I, Paige alone, could take care of all of my needs. So I stopped, basically I got out of a desperate state that a lot of times I found myself in as a kid, which led me to being super faithful. I got out of that desperation state, so therefore I kind of lost my faith, which is sad because now looking back, I know all along the only reason I was super successful at those things was God's grace.
Absolutely.
And then a few things happened in my life that were real like world shakers that I still didn't turn to God for the reason how to escape it. I kept relying on my own self-sufficiency until last June, my aunt passed away, who was like my second mother, and that was something that I couldn't rely on my own self-sufficiency to recover from. So I got real desperate. I got really confused. My grandmother had passed away the year before, and that was my grandfather passed away when I was really young, so that was my first experience with death. My grandmother passing away was my first real experience with it. But I was a bit more prepared for that because she was 94 years old. We had a lot of great conversations. I was there with her the weeks leading up to it. I really got a chance to say goodbye to her. I mean, I sang hymns with her the night before she passed away. And it was a very, if I had to experience death for the first time, I would hope that everybody could experience it that way. But with my aunt, it was a lot different. She was not sick. She was not supposed to be dying. And I basically got a phone call that it was like within a matter of hours she'd be gone. And I didn't know how to handle that, being so far away. I was out in the middle of the cruise contract.
Yeah, we were in the middle of the ocean.
And then it happened, and I had no way to figure that out on my own.
Right.
So I got really confused. I, for the first time, was like, I actually wanted to like talk to God and be like, what's up? Like, what is this? This isn't, it made me think of God for the first time in a long time. And of course I always said like, yeah, I believe in God, and oh, I'm spiritual, but I don't really go to church. Right. I had that whole thing, but I didn't know what faith was as an adult. So I took some time, and I really needed to process this because I knew that where I was at in my life, where I was at in my own personal life at that point was also not a great place, dealing with a lot of struggles I needed to overcome with my own mental issues. So when that happened, I was like, all right, that's it. Like, I'm gonna dig into this. So when I went home for my aunt's funeral, I found a journal that was the Purpose Driven Life Journal. I found it, and my aunt had only done the first day of 40, so I took it and I was like, I'm gonna finish this journal, which is weird because I loved writing, like in high school. I loved writing as a kid, and I just kind of fell away from it. So when I got back to the ship, I really took some time, and this is where our stories are kind of overlapping.
Correct.
Because at this point in life,
I was worthless.
you have me who is completely desperate, completely broken, completely lost and confused in my own personal life, and then with this huge bomb that was dropped in my life, and I was like, I'm gonna seek out these answers. Like, I'm confused. I need something from somewhere outside of myself. Then you have Jeremy, who's completely like, nope to everything and anything. So I guess I should go because my story kind of pulls you.
Yeah.
So I started doing this journal. I would go into we had separate cabins at the time, and I'd go into my own cabin, and I'd literally be in there for like 4 hours at a time,
I'd still
working
be
through
sleeping.
this journal.
Because I slept until 1 or 2 p.m. every day.
Yeah, I'd work through this journal. I also had the book Anxious for Nothing that my dad got me by Max Lucado, which highly suggest that book.
Anything by him.
I was reading that. I was journaling. It's so weird. I'd love to look back at that journal and see the things I wrote, because it would ask me questions that now, if I were asked those questions, I feel like I would have something to base the answers off of. But it was faithful questions. You know what I mean? Like, in what ways have you experienced God's grace today? And it's like, I can answer that now.
Yeah.
But then I was like,
Huh?
what?
Right.
I didn't have faith. I didn't have, but I painstakingly worked my way through this journal. And I uncovered a lot about how I felt about the struggles I was going through with my body image and my sense of isolation and a bunch of issues I was going through, while also working through and trying to honor my aunt's life and the gift that she gave me. From the biggest thing she gave me was encouragement, support, love, and constantly reminding me that God was there and to fully rely on him and to give my life to him. Even when I would just kind of brush it off when she'd send me messages like, God's got this, and I'm like, okay, you know.
Right.
But I dug through it, I did some work, and then I was like, because I'll be honest with you guys, when I got super self-sufficient in high school, I was like, I'm super smart, I know how the world works. I don't know.
Still don't know how the world works.
Right? I don't know. I love the idea of a God, but like, is that really real? Like, is this real? So that's kind of where I was operating from. Like, it sounds nice to say I'm a Christian, so I'll say that, but like, do I actually firmly believe that there's heaven? But I dug through it, I did the work, and all the while, I'm constantly coming to Jeremy with questions, because Jeremy does have all this faith background. And when I would have when it would bring up things about the Bible in this journal or ask questions, I'd be like, Jeremy, what is this talking about? Like, I don't understand this. When it would say, like, what do I value? I'd be like, having a good body, money, having family and friends. I didn't know that, like, values meant, like, honesty, faith, love, you know? So I'd ask him these questions, and, I mean, he was awesome because he was always there. And I think that you kind of knock yourself down a bit more than you should, in terms of, he was never so dismissive of me that it didn't support me.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I did not show up in the way that a husband should show up at that point. Because I wasn't showing up for myself. I wasn't showing up for you. I wasn't showing up for anybody.
Fair. So I kept digging, though. I didn't get discouraged. I kept trying to read books and journal and do my own journaling and figure out how to pray. And I did that through writing a lot at first. And I still do that a lot. Because when I would put pen to paper, it just gave me a sense of focus that I could really dig into deeper. And then I told Jeremy, I said, when we go home in a few months, like, my biggest priority is finding a church. Because I keep reading about how much you need a church, whatever, you know? And his answer's like, yeah, okay. Right. So we get home the first week, and
Disaster
this is
struck.
another story for another day, but we bought a house in the middle of the ocean, and our house is awesome. We love our house.
Love our house. Can't wait to get back to it.
The first day, our entire ceiling from our second story laundry flooded. Terrible terrible things. The tree in our front yard fell over. Like, it was just like disasters. But I kept telling Jeremy, like, when it gets to Sunday, which is like 6 days later, I was like, we're finding a church. I want to find a church. And I was like, we're going to go to this church with my aunt, because my other aunt was helping us out a lot. And I was like, let's go to her church, because it's right around the corner. She's helping us out a lot, so it'd be nice to go to their church. 5
minutes from our house.
And he says,
and I said,
oh, we're actually
going to go?
I said, yes.
So
we're going to bed Saturday, the night before. And I was like, okay, I'm going to set our alarm for like 7. He goes, why? Sleeps till 1 at this point in life. I was like, we're going to church. He's like, wait, that's actually a thing? And I was like, yes, that's a thing. Like, I desperately want to know what this is about. I didn't even know why I desperately needed a church, and now I do know. But then I was like, no, that's what you do. You have to find a church. So we go to this church, and our whole plan was, like, my whole plan was, we're going to go on, like, a church crawl.
We're going to go on a church
We're going to find
a
church in Cincinnati.
We're
going to
try
all out first, like, tasting wedding cakes, and we're going to pick the best one. We go to this church, you guys.
I think from the moment they started the first song,
one of our great friends now.
2 of our great friends now.
2 of our great friends now, yeah. Their hearts during that worship, I looked at Jeremy and I said, that's what I want to be doing with my voice.
I'm pretty sure that, like, within the first 2 songs, like, without even wanting to be, I'm pretty sure that I had tears in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And it was just like,
it was authentic. What? It was transparent. It was, I wanted to feel what they were feeling. I wanted to have that type of surrender and connection and faith. And
at the same time, I know I felt, and I'm sure you probably can feel the same way, it's like you did feel something.
Absolutely.
And it was like, and at that point I was like, what's going on?
And I instantly was brought back to a place that I constantly was brought to as a child, where I'd walk into church, and as soon as they would start singing the worship songs, you're moved. You feel the Spirit moving. Now where I'm at now, I can say that. Then
sure.
I was like, I just always get sad when I go to church.
I just always get emotional.
But I knew, I was like, I want that. And then the very next week, I looked up, and the church was having, what was it called? Foundations. So it was basically like, come an hour early, really learn about this church, figure out if it's, the church for you. And I told Jeremy, I was like, I signed us up for that course, by the way. And he's like,
and I said, we're going even earlier this weekend?
He's like, wait, like that. I thought we were going to try all these churches.
I thought we were going to church crawl.
I was like, no, like I want to learn more about this church. It's literally like 5 minutes from our house, you guys, just by chance. So we go, a house that I didn't even want to buy because I was terrified to buy a house in the middle of the ocean. But he's like, no, I feel good about it. Let's do it.
Which in turn, hindsight's 2020. That's called faith.
Yeah. You were operating with it. You didn't even know. So we go to this class, and at the end of the class, they have these cards that you can kind of basically sign and say, like, I'm going to be a member. And I was like, I'm in. I'm doing this. Like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And he's like,
okay.
So we do that, and you guys, the next week, so in my mind, my perfectly planned out mind, as you guys all know that I operate with, and my plans never go according to plan, I was like, cool, okay, so we're home for like 4 months, so we're really going to get plugged into the church, we're really going to enjoy coming and listening, we'll observe, our preacher at the time was like a celebrity to us, like, we were like, he's so cool, and like, has tattoos, and wears cool clothes like you do, like, this is awesome, that'll be cool if we like say hi to him someday. And
I will also stop for a minute and say that second week was probably like, I don't want to say the nail in the coffin, but like, what's another analogy like that? Like the final straw of why I was like pulled into this place is that nothing at all, like the first week was amazing, the music was great, the message was great, it was like so moving, but then the second week was when Trevor spoke for the first time, and I don't think I've ever sat in Dad, if you're watching this, I don't mean this the way that you're probably going to take it, because I sat through sermon after sermon after sermon of you, and you were my father, so it was just like you were talking the way that you did in my entire childhood. But I've never sat in a room where a stranger is talking out loud to an auditorium full of people, and I felt like he was talking directly to me.
100%.
And that was just the final moment where I said, I need to hear everything this guy has to say.
Yeah. And anyway. I thought, okay, great. So then we're going to go on our contract February through October. So then, like, next Christmas time, we'll see about getting plugged into, like, the worship.
Yeah, we would love to sing.
Awesome. Because I want to be like that girl that I see up there. I want to do that. But, like, we'll give some time to really get ourselves in the church. You guys, the very next week, the guy who's in charge of the foundations class put us in contact with the guy who's in charge of the worship team. We had a great lunch with this guy, basically poured our hearts out to him and where we were at the time. He encouraged us and gave us the pat that we needed to move forward.
You're right, but let's talk about it because this is a funny story. We were told, hey, come out on Thursday night for rehearsal and just watch and check out what it's all about. Next thing you know, we walk into this auditorium on Thursday and they're up there practicing and they say, cool, here's a microphone, get on stage and sing. Our worship leader's on FaceTime and you're going to audition in front of him. We didn't even know the songs.
No.
What songs were they? Which are two very popular songs. So
Wasn't
even
one
now,
of them
Reckless Love was one of them, and the one that we auditioned with was God of This City by Chris Tomlin, right?
Yeah.
Which, like, even saying that now, I'm like, Jeremy, you should know that song, but I had no idea. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, I don't even know this song, but I'm about to have to sing in front of all these people to audition for this, and I thought I was just coming to hang out.
The first service they put us on was the Christmas Eve service.
So one of the
And I was
busiest
like,
services.
oh man, like all this pressure was on, and it's so funny looking back now because where my heart was at then to now, even just a few months later, like there were things I was thinking about then still, because again, and I'm sure a few months from now I'll look back at myself like, and you were even thinking about that.
Right.
But I was like freaking out about like what I looked like, and I was freaking out about like, do I know all the words? I was not in what I think should be the perfect headspace to worship, but then isn't that really the kicker?
Absolutely.
You're always in the perfect headspace
we
to
were
worship.
worried about like being imposters and being phony because we hadn't been doing this for so long. But none of that matters if you're doing it for the right reason.
Your heart's just worshiping God. And slowly over those next few months, we became like integral,
immersed
members of the worship team.
In this worship team in church.
We made some of our absolute best friends, which weirdly enough, sidebar story, two of our absolute best friends now just happened to be coming to check out the church and the auditions that same exact day that we did.
Right.
So weird, and that's how God is. It's not weird, it's God.
And it was just so fast and so full on, and like from the guy who didn't even want to get up on that Sunday, I just couldn't believe what was happening and the way that I felt and how I was yearning for more and making these friendships that ultimately I think set us up for success coming back out into this world.
Yeah. And it was part of the reason we were almost afraid to come back out to the cruise ship world, because I was like, wait, if that's where all these issues were, if I go back and leave this world, am I going to be able to maintain all of this? And it's like, I don't know how I even had that fear, because if anything, I've just dug even deeper, and now, and taking all of that from those few months into this lifestyle has just made this lifestyle even greater.
Yep.
And we've also been able to stay committed and grow in the directions that we were while we were at home, both with our worship music and with things like this. And which the whole reason this began is because on our long car ride down to Florida, we were like, let's make a vlog on like an idea that because we were talking about some Christian topic that we thought of, or an analogy or a metaphor.
Yeah, it was the first one that we ever did, which I still have to put on the YouTube because we only put it on Facebook, was thinking of Jesus as an organ donor.
Yeah, okay, so go back and watch that video once he puts it up.
I want to go back and watch
But
that
I was like, yeah, like let's just record this because that'd be fun.
We're driving, it'll waste some time.
Yeah, and we were like, this is cool. Like, there's a whole, you're supposed to share with the world. Like, and all of our gifts and our unique talents and gifts and traits are meant to be shared, to all come together to live and worship and have, you know, the best life we can. And then our personal faith as well has just continued to develop and grow out here, like exponentially.
Yep.
Because it's a cool gift we have out here, being unplugged and cut off from the world and having the downtime we do, because it's kind of like we're always on our little retreat to really get into the Word. Specifically, like I'm reading the Bible for the very first time in my life. I'm sure I've read passages from the Bible.
Right, but you're reading it from start to finish. I'm
reading the Bible. I have filled like 4 to 5 journals, just like last contract, just asking God questions.
We bought countless books from Christian authors, Stephen Furtick, Levi Lusko, Max Lucado, Mark Batterson. Oh,
tons of podcasts that we listen to when we're walking or exercising or doing our makeup for shows. And yes, I said our makeup because he has makeup for shows.
Just one.
multiple people, the Elevation Church services, the Laura Casey,
everything.
Multiple. So we're basically just like on this retreat. We're singing and dancing out here, but we're also just like growing our faith right now.
And I think that's what this video is all about, how we got back into our faith, but I also think that I don't think there's an ending point.
No.
Right? Like, you're constantly growing, it's how we got back on the path and to keep growing closer to God.
Yeah.
And it's just been an amazing thing to see how life-changing it's been in 6-7 months. I mean, now we're coming up on almost a year, because we went home at the end of October last year.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
this all began
about
for
a year
me
ago.
last June.
Yeah.
But what's so amazing, guys, and why I want to share this isn't just to like tell you our story and our testimony, but it's kind of like me pleading to those of you out there who are like, yeah, I'm kind of in that place. Like, I've always kind of believed in God, but I heard an analogy like that you're just choosing to sit right inside the gate of heaven rather than like really live the life that is there for you. Like, dig into it, guys. You were saved the moment that you accepted Jesus as your Savior and that you were baptized. But if that's the end of your faith journey, like, it makes me so sad because looking back on myself, if that's where I would have ended my faith journey, because of like the world of difference. I mean, my anxiety has ceased. My like disordered eating has ceased. My inability to sleep at night has ceased. My constant judgment of myself and others has ceased. My life is exponentially better. I see opportunity now. I'm present now. I see growth. I see chances to love the people around me. It's like, it literally, I get why they call it an awakening, because that's literally how I feel. For the first time in my life, it's like I've woken up to what matters, and it's this gift that now I get to take through the rest of this life, living that rich life that God had intended for me, that I was basically just sleeping on for the last, from the time I was saved.
I literally was sleeping on it. I now get up at a reasonable hour. My depression is gone. I see positively again. I look for a society again, a community.
Yes, no more isolation.
No more isolation, and it actually is unbelievable.
And it's indescribable as well. And I know that there's so many people, and I mean, I've even dealt with some of my friends and such that are like, oh, so like you're all into God now, and I'm like, okay, one, yes I am. Yes, I am.
Yes.
But second, it's like, I just want people to get rid of this concept and this misconstrued idea of what it means to like be a Christian and be faithful, and that judgment that you have on it simply because you don't understand it. And I talk like this because I'm talking to how I used to look at it. Because guys, it is the greatest gift. To the fact that I didn't fully accept this gift and walk with this gift my whole life is baffling to me. Now that I know what life is in this world. Yeah. And I'm not saying like my life's all peaches and roses now and all of a sudden the whole world is incredible. But it's a whole lot more colorful, and it's a whole lot more, you're awakened to the strangers you meet, the things that they'll say to you. You're like, do people always say things like that to me? And I was just so in my own world and in my path that I didn't hear it? Or is it like, no, that's God talking to me through other people now? Random strangers and signs on the streets in New York. And I always say to Jeremy, I feel like I'm in the movie Bruce Almighty. But I just desperately want people, especially young people, like people who are like us, to realize, like, guys, trust me, we know. We want you to hustle. We want you to have savings goals and make that money and reach those fitness goals and have everything that you want in this world and this life. Because like, if it's calling you, go after it. But, like, not simply for having it. Like, it has to come from a deeper why. And when it is driven by a faith and a love and when everything you're doing is to worship the God who created you, it's all easier. First of all, you're gonna reach it a lot faster. A few things are gonna fall away because you're gonna realize, like,
they're not even important.
Maybe it's really important to be healthy and take care of this body that God blessed me with so that I can best serve him, but maybe it's not super important to starve myself into having abs. Like, your life will be, that's how I feel now. Like, I can breathe again.
For sure.
And you have
purpose.
You have a foundation. You have identity. You have, like, and people always think I'm crazy for saying this, and I know that it would be a difficult thing, and I'm not diminishing this at all, but the concept of, like, losing everything I own, or, like, losing somebody that I really love, absolutely would be devastating, but I have somebody to walk through that with now. I have that within my own body, because the Spirit is always with me, and to have that security, it's so secure. It's a peace I can't explain.
Right.
Absolutely. The peace of passive. My dad used to think that in church they were saying pizza passive. The peace of passive. So it's more than just our story. It's a call to action. That if you're feeling this way and you're feeling like, yeah, I've kind of had faith before, and I always went to church as a kid, but I am just living for this world and for making my paychecks and going to bed at night and hustling with my body and my job and my friends and all the to-do lists and the juggling act of life. Like, I know all of that's important, but nothing is as important as having a spiritual faith.
Yeah, and that's kind of it, right? At this point, like, first off, side note, Mom and Dad, you didn't do anything wrong. I was just a high school kid. Thank you so much. I cannot put into words ever how much you've given me the example to follow and the foundation of what it means to be a Christian in today's world. So thank you for that. Don't think that you did anything wrong if you're watching. That was just my own bad choices.
Same to you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, but if you have any questions or you are feeling like this, like, message us. Like, we would love to talk to you about our journey even more, or if you have specific questions, or it's just so much easier these days, guys. Everything is online. Our church, Christ Church in Mason, is unbelievable, and they are online. I would love for you to walk in the building because the community and inside that building is so important, but I know that is scary for a lot of people, and they feel like they don't belong inside the building, and I encourage you do belong inside that building. Walk inside that building and watch your life change. But if you are not ready for that step, it is online. I will link to the YouTube channel in the description. See what we're all about.
Email us. What's our email address?
paigeandjair@gmail.com. We'll also link that below. Just, like, reach out to someone. It's just so important that we're there for each other, and
that's why we're doing this.
That's it.
We're not just doing this because we like hearing ourselves talk.
I hate hearing myself talk.
We want this feed of communication to come back from you guys, because if us sharing our story inspires you to want to dig a little bit deeper into yours, we've done what we feel we're called to be doing right now. So this is where we're at in our journey, and I'm sure that in a year from now we can make a whole nother video. Like,
we probably will make a whole
we thought we were in our place then.
Absolutely.
Look where we are even a year later. It's an incredible journey, and it's so cool, because always in life you hear, like, the things that are worth having the most, like, you'll love the journey of it, the ups and downs, but the journey is worth it, not just the end result. And I feel like my spirituality is the first thing in my life that I've not just been aiming towards an end result. I've been thriving in the ups and downs of the entire journey.
For sure.
And loving every step along the way.
And the end result is eternity.
What? So not only will it make this life incredible and rich and meaningful and purposeful, and you'll leave behind this legacy of, you can't even put into words how many people's lives you'll have touched from getting into your own faith, but then you get this ultimate reward. You won't just be sitting inside the gate when you get to heaven.
Amazing. I could talk about this all day.
Me too. Guys, message us. Seriously, we want to hear about you and your journey and where you're at with all of this. Or if you're nowhere with all of this and you're like, who's God? Like, talk to us.
Oh my gosh.
We are ready. We are ready to give our hearts and our stories and be open and transparent and authentic with you all to help open up this amazing gift, the gift of life.